Good morning, folks. Man, I slept in a little bit. It's almost 6 o'clock. Oh, wow. I feel pretty good. I thought I was tossing and turning last night, but here I am waking up almost 2 hours late. I guess that means I slept pretty good. Let's talk about sleep. Let's talk about regulation of your body. Let's talk about just plain regulation and taking care of yourself. My suggestions are you eat 3 meals a day at the same times. My suggestions are you keep the same sleep hours. You go to bed at the same time, you get up at the same time. And if you want to sleep in, you only sleep in an hour. Maybe an hour on the weekends. Why? Because you don't want to throw off your internal clock. The better you can regulate yourself, the better off your health is going to be. The better you're going to sleep, the longer you're going to live, the better life is going to go. As far as sleep, the same sleep time, the same time to go to sleep is important. But what's more important is the time you wake up. That's the most important thing when it comes to your circadian clock, your biorhythms, and all of that. So you want to get up at the same time every day. Within an hour of it, not much different. And also, if you want to nap during the day and you're in your prime or peak earning years, a nap is okay, but you want to limit it. Ideally, about 45 minutes, and you can also do cat naps. But you don't want to go an hour. When you hit an hour or longer, you throw off your biorhythms. You don't get to sleep as well that night. So if you're having trouble sleeping, you could try sleep deprivation. That would be where you force yourself to stay awake. And if you're resetting your clock because you're not sleeping very good and you need to do a computer reset, we'll call it that, then the way you want to do that is you want to stay up for 24 hours. It's a real hard thing to do. And it is not the best thing for you. But we're talking about resetting your biorhythms and getting yourself back in the proper flow. And so if you can stay up a night, great. And then the next night, you allow yourself to go to sleep maybe a little bit before the time you want to get awake. The main thing is you want to wake up the same time every day. So in other words, and this is sleep deprivation, came out of Great Britain quite a while back, and this is helpful for those of you who have sleep disorders, bipolar disorders, mania problems. When you're going through depression, it's hard to stay awake. It's hard not to fall asleep. But a manic person doesn't need sleep. And that's a problem too. So we want to do this sleep deprivation method. Now, you might want to go to sleeping pills. I don't recommend those. Those will throw you off. It'll throw your biorhythms off, and it just won't be natural. It'll actually throw off your hierarchy of sleep. You see, you have to have a certain amount of time in REM sleep, rapid eye motion sleep. Ideally, you want a few hours there. That's the deepest sleep. And there's other stages of sleep as well. And you want to preserve the hierarchy of sleep. And when you take the medicines, psychiatric antidepressants, anything, supplements, you throw off the hierarchy of sleep, so it's not natural. So, back to sleep hygiene, sleep deprivation. You can use the pills, but it's not very good. It'll keep you thrown off, destroys the hierarchy of sleep, and you want that natural hierarchy of sleep. So, if you do sleep deprivation, you'll stay up, and you don't let yourself get much sleep. And you might be shooting for, let's say, a target of 6 a.m. in the morning. You want to get up, or 7 a.m. Okay, 6 or 7. Let's just say 6. So you sleep that night and you go to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. So you stayed up for almost 24 hours. You stayed up for about 23 hours, perhaps. It's just generally speaking. And so you go to sleep at 5 o'clock and you let yourself sleep for an hour. And that might be a little too radical and too short. So you might want to try it a little bit earlier. Like you might want to keep yourself awake, past midnight, maybe to 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Whatever works for you. Remember, this is very idiographic. It's very individual. So, and we're just giving you the extreme model. So you stay up 24 hours and you go to bed at 5 a.m. You sleep for 1 a.m. It's not enough sleep, I know. There's my automatic vent closing rain sensor. It's not raining. I guess it's humid. So, you get awake at 6 o'clock. You stay awake. You want to nod off. You want to go to sleep. Don't go to sleep. You stay awake. Do not use coffee or stimulants to stay awake. Exercise is a stimulant. You can do that. And then the next night, you want to go to sleep an hour earlier. So you target 4 a.m. 4 a.m., you go to sleep. Alarm goes off at 6 a.m., 2 hours. It's still not enough sleep. But you're building your sleep hierarchy back. You're getting the most natural sleep possible. So you stay up that next day, and come 3 in the morning, you go to sleep. You sleep from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. 3 hours of sleep. And you get up at 6 a.m., you stay up. No naps. Not during this period. Not during your sleep reset. Not when you're trying to reset your biorhythms. So, you stay up all day, and the next morning, you go to bed an hour earlier at 2 a.m. Remember, the time you get up is more important than the time you go to bed. So, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., you sleep. That's 4 hours of sleep. For some people, that's enough. But I'm going to tell you a little secret. As you get older, it's not enough. Not only that, most people my age don't even sleep that much. So my recommendation is you get your habits of sleep down as early as you can in your life. I would say if you're having problems in your 30s, get it together before you hit the 40s. If you're having problems in the 40s, get it together before you hit the 50s. If you're in your 50s, you're in trouble because when you hit the 60s, it's really hard to change the sleep patterns. And older people don't get good sleep. They don't get much sleep. Some of them don't sleep at all. Them, right? As if I'm not one. Okay, so you stay up the next day, right? You might want to nod off. You might want to take a nap. Do not give in. No. None of that stuff. And the next night, you go to sleep at 1 a.m. So you're sleeping 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., 5 hours of sleep. Not too bad. Stay up all day, and then the next day at midnight, you go to sleep. And the alarm goes off at 6. You got 6 hours of sleep. You stay up all day, do it one more day, but actually 2 more. You go to bed at 11, and you're waking up at 6. You got 7 hours of sleep. And then you stay up again, you go to sleep at 10. Now you're getting 8 hours of sleep. Now, a lot of people say 8 hours is enough. I like 9 myself. That's what I liked when I was younger. That's what I like now. I don't like to sleep more than that, but there's been periods in my life when I have slept more than that. So, you go to bed at 9 o'clock. You wake up at 6 o'clock. There's your 9 hours of sleep. Some people actually benefit from a full 10 hours of sleep. And of course, if you're not doing well and you really need to rest, just ignore all this stuff and stay in bed. Keep the shades on the windows. Take care of yourself. Give yourself that rest. Ideally, I would say we get up with the sunrise or slightly before. And we know the sun rises at different times, different places, different seasons. So I would recommend that you try to get up the same day, every day of the week, except one day. Why is that? Well, the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. And so our biorhythms stay the same except for one day a week. Guess which day a week that is? Yeah, it's the Sabbath. So on the Sabbath, things changed. They reset. It was given for us to benefit us. So you can pick your Sabbath. And that one day a week you do things differently because everything is getting reset. Creator Father Yahweh made us amazing, made us wonderfully. Really, the great architect was a wonderful designer. So you actually, let me see if I can center this better. You actually need to go to sleep the same time, except on your Sabbath day. That day you get up an hour later. That is sleeping in. If you go more than that, you throw your biorhythms off. Well, you most likely will. The risk is there, and I think the risk is very great. Likewise, naps. Once you go past an hour, it's problematic. An hour and a half will interfere with your ability to sleep the next night. Now, I was having a rough time yesterday, so I went out and I bought myself a chocolate milkshake like my dad used to have. He loved those things. Well, I'm not going to tell you which fast food place I bought it from, but it really was just a wallop of poison, bunch of sugar. It was a toxic concoction. And I needed to relax. I'd been working on this report, and I was way hyped up and talking with people about it and mulling it over and working very hard. I work very intensely when I work. I don't do a full 8-hour day anymore, but I work. It seems like 4 hours, 5 hours is about my stamina. But this matter was extremely toxic to me, for me. I mean, my blood pressure's been off the charts. It's been up and down. I've gotten it normal, then it goes back up again. So I'm trying to self-regulate. I'm trying to regulate myself. Other things you need to take into consideration in sleep hygiene are what you do before you go to bed. Now, if you're having trouble sleeping, one of the things you can do is you can take a shower. And don't make it a really hot shower. Make it a warm shower. Why? Because you want to ideally get your body to drop a few tenths of a degree. The few tenths of a degree that you need for sleep onset. And so you could do that by regulating the sheets, the blankets, the air that's flowing, your air conditioning. So you want to cool down just a little bit in order to induce sleep. It's been a long time since I talked about this or came up with a program. When I was first in the Department of Corrections, ASPC Central, Arizona State Prison Complex Central Unit, Arizona State Prison Complex, Florence, North Yard. It's a short-term yard for those who only had, they were low security, level 2 security, and we had the tents out there, which was not very pleasant. It's pretty bad, actually. And these fellows had 2 years or less to do on their sentences. So they were going to be released to the public. When I interviewed for the position, that's the job I wanted because I wanted to get these men ready to be back in public. Well, Monday I walked in. I didn't want to, it's kind of like a yard off. It was a medical building. And the women there tended to keep it cold as ice. I mean, they cranked that air conditioning up, so it was too cold for me. I was getting chilled. I do not like extremes in temperature differences. And of course, when a woman's going through her changes, she needs some extra cool air. Let's just say that. And that's an important thing to accommodate the ladies on, because remember, their lives, their body chemistry are a lot more complex. It's more of a balancing act for a woman. So we men do need to protect them in that sense. I know, that's a horrible thing to say in this day, because they're strong, brave women. They could do it all on their own. Well, we need to think about them, and we need to give them a few extra degrees, but be careful when they crank it up too much. We have all that global warming and cooling and weather change stuff to worry about, right? So you don't want the air conditioning to be cranked too extreme, because we've got to save the planet, right? Anyway, I walked into the room and there were two of these folding tables with the wood grain on top. It's the sort of table that's about big enough so you can put 3 chairs on one side and sit. It's kind of like a conference table that you can move around in rooms as they set up different configurations. They had 2 of those big tables, and my yard was not that big. I can't really remember right now. It might have been 2,000 men. And they had 2 tables so full of pharmaceuticals, packets of drugs in envelopes, paper envelopes, little manila envelopes, little plastic envelopes. They were so piled up with medications that they were falling off onto the floor. And that was what security had gotten when they did their sweep of the tents. They do that on a regular basis for security purposes. These were all the medications the inmates had hoarded up and had not used, which indicated to me that we were wasting a lot. And we were spending, I think we were spending $2 million a month? No. I think we were spending $2 million on psychiatric medications for the year. And number one medication, the purpose of it was for insomnia. Psychiatrists think they can do everything through a pill. Doctors think they can fix anything through, just take this little pill, it'll fix it all. You're better off with behavioral intervention and regulating yourself. Nothing beats the independence of self-regulation. So I went in there, and here's this medicine falling off the tables, and what are they going to do with it? Well, you can't. Once it's dispensed by federal law, you can't put it back in the pharmacy. In the pharmacy, you can't do it. It's against federal law to do that. You would think, well, that doesn't make sense. We're wasting a lot of money. Well, that's federal law for you. And by the way, if you send any of your parents to hospice and they're on expensive medications, you will be surprised. You may spend thousands of dollars on medications. You may spend tens of thousands of dollars on medications. But once that patient passes in hospice, the person in charge takes the medicines, and you will find them throwing out your $10,000 of medication you just bought for your mom or your dad. They'll be flushing it down the toilet as required by law. No wonder our water is so polluted in this nation. We're flushing down poisons and toxins all the time. Some of that stuff you can't get out of the water. You can't treat it. That's why men are doing so poorly, is because of endocrine disruptors, because of the female hormones in the water supply and in the water naturally now. Even the fish in some of our rivers are affected by the overwhelming estrogens in the water. So I had a problem. We're spending $2 million a year on medications, most of which are getting thrown out, wasted. I like to save money. $2 million is a good amount of money to look at. If I can cut that in half, wow, great. If I can just save $100,000, doesn't that count? I think it does. If I save $50,000, it still helps. And the other problem I had is that the master's level jackasses decided, and this is what they talked about among themselves, and they told me they made the decision. I'm supposed to be the one who's license as a psychologist is on the line. I'm on the hook for their practice or malpractice. Even if the psychiatrist screws up the way they set that system up in the prisons, I'm the fall guy. I'm the one that's responsible. I'm the one they're going to hang it all on. So, seeing all this waste, I thought about it. I went to see the pharmacist, hit it off great with him. I got the printouts, found out what drugs we were using, the amount of money we were spending, and what we were wasting. Most of it we were wasting on. And so what the master's level jackass has decided is that when these men got out, it was better to give them a check and maybe prevent them from reoffending than it was to risk them reoffending again, because it cost us more to prosecute them and incarcerate them than it did to just give them a check. That's liberalism for you. That's what's going on in your big cities today. They pay people not to do crimes. Wow. So if you're paying them not to do crimes, you stop paying them, what are you going to end up with? More crimes. They were giving them diagnoses so that they would be able to be qualified for disability based on a mental health diagnosis. Yeah, that's right. And that way, when they got out, they would get a monthly check from Social Security Disability. The problem with it is a lot of inmates were discharged with the wrong medicines that actually impaired their ability to think, to act, and behave. They were given the wrong diagnoses. And of course, that actually made them more prone to reoffending because they weren't thinking straight. They couldn't think right. They were impaired by the medical treatment. We got to give them a check. So we give them a mental health disability. I didn't like that. For one, you actually could disable a man so he might more readily commit a murder, take a life. Liberals don't think very far. I devised a plan working with the pharmacist. Let's come up with a simple plan to reduce the use of medications, reduce the reliance upon medications, and let's put an end to discharging men who are more dangerous than they needed to be. Remember, my goal is to get these men ready to be reunited, reintegrated in society. And I wanted them to succeed. I didn't want them reoffending and hurting anybody else. I worked on impulse control for a lot of them. I worked on a lot of these inmates. I worked on making them feel comfortable around other people so that they wouldn't get in fights, so other people wouldn't target their asses. Some of the guys were so unusual that they would be targeted, challenged for fights out there. You know, I had one guy that was so massive in the shoulders, and he had tiny hips. I mean, you would have thought you were looking at a caricature, at a cartoon character. He had to turn side. He was shorter than I was, much shorter. He had to turn sideways when walking in the door of my office because his doggone shoulders were so damn wide. His chest was so massive. And, of course, when somebody who thought he was a bad guy saw him, he wanted to fight him because, oh man, this is a challenge. I got to take this guy down. That'll be a feather in my cap. Oh my God, do we rise to challenges like climbing that mountain? Why did we climb the mountain? Because it's there. Why did we start the fight? Because that big dude who's so weird looking with these massive shoulders is there, and I want to impress my buddies. I want to take him down. I want to show everybody how great I am. Dumbass thinking. Anyway, we were discharging inmates with the wrong diagnoses, were on the wrong medications. And the attorneys out there were really smart. The defense attorneys were realizing that the men had been disabled by Department of Corrections. They were sent out on the wrong medications, wrong diagnosis, wrong treatment, impaired their client. Therefore, their client reoffended. This is a mitigating circumstance, Your Honor. We have to go light on them. We have to go easy on them on the sentence. That's the only right thing to do because we created the problem. We disabled them. We impaired them. So they were reoffending and coming back. So much for your liberal thinking and your wonderful thinking that you're going to get stuff. Well, liberals want to be God, let's face it. So my program was really simple. I'm going to get my team working like it should be working as a team. I'm going to take my rightful place as the head of the team for my unit, and I'm going to oversee this stuff, and we are going to diagnose these men properly. We're going to do our jobs instead of sitting on our asses doing time, waiting for that retirement paycheck, because that's what those jackasses were doing. They weren't doing their jobs. An inmate would submit a health needs request, and they would bring the inmate in, sit him down, and they'd bullshit with the inmate. They never addressed the inmate's health needs. They were negligent. And what did they do? They would tell the inmate, oh, this or that. They wouldn't do their jobs. And they would send them back and not charge them for the health needs request. I think they were required to pay out of their own bank $2. Maybe it was $3. I'm pretty sure it was $2. If I remember right, they had to pay $2 out of their own account to see me as a psychologist. Now, you may think, man, that's cheap. They don't deserve the service. Look, I don't give a damn how cheap it is. I agreed to do the job. They need the help. I'm going to help. I'm going to do my job. And so I proposed a project. I wanted a pilot program. I wanted to demonstrate it on North Unit only, on my yard only. And then after this pilot program was proven to be working, then I wanted to try it across the whole prison complex. Then we could use it across all of the Department of Corrections. You got to remember, it's our responsibility to discharge these men to make the public safer and the men safer. We weren't doing our jobs. I went in to my boss, Dr. Suzanne Arnold, and I told her my proposal. Yeah, I told her the proposal and what it was about. We didn't have access to computers. I didn't have it in writing. The computers, she had the computer. She was the supervisor. Me, I was just a low-life clinician providing frontline services, which I did. She never did. She got the Congressional Student Loan Forgiveness, which is based upon providing direct care, which was fraudulent on her part and malfeasance on the part of her supervisor, Dr. McCauley. So she breached the contract with the United States Congress. But it's okay, folks, because she's a liberal. They can do whatever they want. Anyway, that's another story. But the main thing I'm trying to tell you is I told my guys what I wanted to do, and they didn't want to work. They didn't want to do the job. These men aren't worth it. Hold on. We're not treating these men. We're treating society at this point. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the systems involved. Look at our obligation. This is the Arizona Department of Corrections. This is the most notorious prison system outside of the Deep South. And you want to send out a more dangerous product? I call that malpractice and negligence. I ain't doing it. I'm going to do my job. Yeah, I'm not getting paid very much. So what? I agreed to it. I'm obligated. Besides that, I ain't working for these guys. I'm working for my next job. As soon as I got myself in a good position for a better position, I'm gone, baby. So I'm working for my next job. That's what motivates me. That's what that's what one of my trainers helped me do in my internship at San Diego County. Conservatism really does work, and it's the only thing that does work. this communism, liberalism does not work. So I made my proposal, and the next thing I know, one of my guys leaves abruptly. And the other master's level guy said he's not doing it. He's a low life. He gambled most of his money away and lived in a little tiny trailer. Anyway, the other one, the golfer, the tall guy, the teacher, the guy that had 30 years in could retire any time because he had 30 years in. He wasn't going to get any more in retirement. He's just hanging out because it's kind of a fun thing to do. Putting his feet up all the day and not doing the job. He went up to see Dr. Suzanne Arnold in the Central Unit, inside the walls. I felt like Judas had gone to do his deed. Yes, I could tell. I had a hunch. He went and he complained. I guess he thought he was ratting me out. The team I had, who did their best to recruit me because they would do everything. I didn't need to lift a finger. They would do it all. And, of course, they weren't doing the job anyway. They decided they wanted to rebel against authority, my authority, as a psychologist responsible for the unit. And they were going to get rid of me. So up goes my non-Walt. Walt was the other guy. And non-Walt went up to Dr. Suzanne Arnold's office. Guy was tall. Really good golfer. Well married, happily married. You know, women want guys over 6 feet tall with a six-pack. He was in good shape. Really good shape. I mean, you know, the other thing is they want a man with six-figure income. Now, he didn't have that. But he was probably making $45,000 a year, master's level counselor in Department of Corrections. Anyway, he comes back to the office. He didn't talk with me. I had already talked with the others. They talked with him. He didn't talk with me. He come back, and he looked at me. And I proceeded to try to tell him my proposed pilot project and how it was going to save millions of dollars. Well, it was going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were going to produce a safer product. The inmates were going to be discharged level-headed with the right doggone diagnosis, not on the wrong medications that were screwing them up, that actually became mitigating factors when they reoffended and were being sentenced. And I told him this project about it in a very gingerly fashion. I wasn't lording over these people. I'm telling them, this is my idea, this is my project, this is what I want to do. Walt, it wasn't his name. It was his name. That's okay. I really don't want to say it here. I like the man. Anyway, he dropped his jaw. And he said, John, I wish you had told me. He liked me. I wish you had told me. Well, I was trying to tell him, but the others got to him first. The two relatives, the psychiatric nurse who he called the what did the guys nickname her? The 2-year wonder, because she had a 2-year college degree in nursing in Canada, and when she crossed the border and came to this country, somehow it got translated or mistranslated into a full 4-year nursing degree, and so she was empowered, and she was the one making the most money. She was making a lot more money than I was as a psychologist. So she was ruling the roost. She thought she ruled it. She was dictating to these guys. She was a real female dog, and her father-in-law was there aiding and abetting, and they're taking off for lunch, going home early, punching out early, so to speak. In other words, you show up for work, that may be, what would it be show up for? 6 in the morning? Well, no, I worked 10 hours, so I guess it was 7 to 5, whatever it was. I can't do math very well, but that seems to make sense. Took me 12 hours to do a shift, an hour to travel, 10 hours there, an hour to get home. Anyway, Walt says to me, his face dropped. Why? Because he went up to see Dr. Arnold and complain about me because they wanted to get rid of me. I was on probation, so they could get rid of me. And they didn't want to do the job. They didn't want to do the work. They just wanted to pad the time and sit on their asses like most public employees until their retirement time, time to cash in on their retirement. And the jobs didn't pay much, and the retirements didn't give you much either. So, they were worthless, and they were proving it every day, just the way they lived. He sat there, and his feet dropped off the desk. It was always up on the table. He always had his feet up on the table. Big, lanky, tall guy, maybe 6'2", 6'4", or something. And it wasn't a big guy. It was kind of thin, good-looking, attractive man. He dropped his feet off the floor. Clump. They hit hard. I said, John, I wish you'd told me. And he looked at me right in the eyes. He says, John, this job isn't fun anymore. I'm going to retire. He took off, put in his retirement papers. I think he went to Maine. He and his wife moved to Maine. He took a job teaching. He was upset with what the other two had set him up for, and now they went after me because they didn't want to work. These inmates aren't worth it. Look, you son of a bitches, and I'm not talking about inmates, I'm talking about my staff. You agreed to take the job. Yes, it does not pay well. Yes, you have job security and you get a check. You've got good benefits. You need to earn your keep. Sure, you can get paid more elsewhere, but you and I, we agreed to take the job. You got to live up to your end of the bargain no matter what. Anyway, I wanted to produce a safer inmate, and I saw the pattern. It's a mitigating factor when it comes to sentencing. Your Honor, we can't give them as much time because they did a bad job in the Department of Corrections. They discharged the man on the wrong medications. They caused confusion. They threw him off. They gave him the wrong diagnosis because they sent him to a good professional who did the job and worked the inmate up, worked his client up, and found that we were discharging him with the wrong diagnosis so we could get them a check. What was the disability check they were getting? $550 a month. And that was going to keep them from reoffending. It also kept them from getting a job because they weren't motivated to get a real job, making a couple $1,000s a month at least. God, that's what an average man was making at that time. They should have been getting a real job at $2,000 a month instead of settling for peddling $525, $550 a month, $535, whatever it was. But that's what happens when you got liberalism. You end up with more criminality. You end up with more people disabled, disenfranchised. You pull the rug out and you pull out the motivation. You rob them of their spirit. You rob their souls. You're selling men's souls. That's in the Bible. They deal in the souls of men. And where does that happen more than any other place? In your penitentiaries. Yeah, the inmates told me, I wish I'd have kept notes. I wish I had. The inmates knew what was going on better than we did. Their intelligence was better than our intelligence. And the inmates tried to tell me the problems they had. And the main problem they had is that the federal government, our central federal communist government paid the states for every day they kept an inmate, for every day they incarcerated a man, they gave the state more money than the state cost them to incarcerate the inmate. And for the state of Arizona, their biggest money maker, certainly their biggest employer, was the Arizona Department of Corrections. And so if I was dictator of America, let's say, or president, I would change that. I would say the federal government no longer funds your prisons in the states. Not only that, I would require, if I could, this is being a real dictator, mind you, but I would require the people in the county itself to pay for the inmates' incarceration. Why would I require that? Because if the crime isn't worth the punishment, the people at large will protest. We don't want to pay to house his ass and give him meals and protect him. We don't want to pay whatever it costs for him. That crime's not worth it. Well, if it's not worth it, then stop profiting off the souls of men. Stop making money off these guys. That's what you're doing. It's in the Bible. They deal in the souls of men. It's in Revelations of all things. It's about the beast system that we have today. So, my take on crime and punishment is this. If there's no victim, is there really a crime? If there's no victim, has a crime been committed? That's the way it was when we started as a free nation. And if the crime is so horrible, then the people of the county, the good people of the county, should be willing and eager to foot the bill for incarcerating that person and keeping them safe. But they aren't willing to shoulder their load. So I think people in the county should be mandated to pay for mental health treatment, state hospitalization. When you decide you're going to deprive somebody of their rights, the county should be on the hook for that. The county's on the hook for mental health examinations when a man is looked at to see whether or not we want to rule him incompetent. We want to find him dangerous to himself or others so that we can make him a ward of the state and take jurisdiction over him. So we should be paying for the incarceration. I know you're going to say, no, we need the federal government to pay us so we can make money. We want to profit off this. This is why most of the prisons in the country are private. This is why America incarcerates more men per capita than any other country in the world. Even the communists. We put more people in prison than right China per capita. More people than Russia. It's been that way for decades. And you call yourself land of the free, home of the brave. No. It is definitely land of the free, home of the slave. You're slave to the central communist federal government. The federal government shouldn't be spending money they don't have, putting us in debt, creating it out of thin air, causing inflation, which is a definite form of theft because it's on the backs of us. But since we gave the money masters their monopoly, that's what we've had. They've stolen the whole country. They've robbed and stolen everything. They own every institution, everything. They actually own you and me, but you think you're free. I know different. I know better. I'm Dr. John Taylor Kent. Help me out with my show. Buy my Bibles. When you see that PayPal account go up, you want to gift me? Gift me. I would appreciate that. The laborer is worth his keep. I'm working pretty hard for you. But I also love my work. Matter of fact, my work is my pathology. You see, I'm a professional rescuer. I want to rescue what was once a great republic. I want to rescue my nation. I want to rescue my people. I want to rescue the world because these jackasses that own and run the planet today are destroying Mother Earth. The earth groans for her saviors.